Alright. So in part 2, where do we leave it off? With head being put on a pike, a sharpened stick. Alright. Left off a pretty good spot, by the way. Now, remember, there's no way to be able to ask what garners such an extreme response after 20 years of instigation. Remember, 20 years of instigation and escalation needs to get met with an appropriate and proportionate response. Alright? Because you also got to remember, there was 4 murder attempts against me because of the situation. Which, by the way, considering the fact that they all fucking failed, you should consider yourself pretty fucking lucky about that, Ventura. Because, yeah, if they would have succeeded, you do realize that because of the instigation, the circumstances with all the harassment that ended up happening, if my body would have popped up, and, that whole beatdown video that you regretted going viral because you had lost that scholarship, because you were wrestling at the time, and, straight fighting ultimately would have ended up getting you ejected from many opportunities for, participation and, academia and, actual, sports programs due to, unsportsmanlike conduct. Yeah. If I remember correctly, that would end up being the cause of, all opportunities and scouting capabilities that end up getting stripped away. Ultimately, yeah, would have automatically been viewed as one of the top suspects to begin with. But, now, you gotta ask, with decades of that situation, there were people who sat by, antagonized, provoked, thought there would be no consequences, and enabled things to escalate to such a extreme response. So, what happens to them? Well, the same thing would end up happening to them. But they would have to be, displayed right in the middle of their town, for everyone to see, But, thing is, though, have to be those body pillows and everything completely naked to go ahead and match the metaphor, for all the thievery of you were born naked, you'll die naked, because we got to go ahead and, throw some, biblical fear-mongering the way you wanted to, drizzle that on to the whole situation. Because you want to claim that they're, religion's never actually instigated, such a disproportionate and, extreme response, despite the factor that, yeah, the amount of wars throughout history that have been literally instigated because of religious differences. I mean, literally, it's in some form or another in almost every war. I ended up going ahead and being a cornerstone of, what initiated the war to begin with. So, but the question is, you got to make it a little bit worse when it comes down to the main culprit. Alright? But, just to be able to go ahead and make it identifiable that they were the main culprit. So in that way, how do you go ahead and do that? Well, in this circumstance, you chop the dick off their their carcass, and you shove it right, in a hole with the pillow where their asshole would have been. So you finally could go ahead and establish, yeah, I have absolutely made sure that after all, when all was said and done, that they would have to absolutely go fuck themselves. But is that enough? I mean, then we got to go talk about, the whole circumstance, though, of, the forced into homelessness repetitively situation, because that whole thing was pretty ugly. So, have their house deemed as their sanctuary, and, because of all the unethical, sinful, immoral acts that they ended up going ahead and engaging in the process of trying to be so righteous, they didn't live up to the purity of their rhetoric. So, you burn that house down. Alright? I mean, ultimately, you wanted to make sure that it was properly cleansed. And nothing will go ahead and cleanse a place more than fire. So, I mean, ultimately, that there are a lot of recourses to targeting somebody for 20 years and having them harassed. Could end up going ahead and garnishing. Now, the question is, with those level of extremes, what could potentially be holding the person that had been targeted for 20 fucking years to hold themselves back? Well, first off, I've done what I can to disengage, because before what had kept me from, reacting in full-blown retribution was the hope of having a future that I'd be able to get to enjoy some peace that you wanted to swear I would never get because of a conflict that you started and then got mad that you had to face consequences when you wanted to try to justify your instigation. So, ultimately that sounds like the real person that needs to learn accountability, Also sounds like somebody who's never had to go ahead and learn when somebody is pushed way too far. If it's a good idea to, try to provoke anymore, if there's any more room for any more provocation. Because I don't know. With the things that I'm holding back from doing, it's starting to feel like there might not be any more room for any more provocation. Because it might sound like they're not only putting, their life in jeopardy, but it might sound like they're putting their entire family's life in jeopardy. And thinking, oh, well, because of the distance and how far they are away, there's no way that, they're able to go ahead and know exactly how many family members I have, where my family members are located, any of that. And the response that needs to get said to that. That's some pretty bold thinking for somebody that literally thought that you'd be able to hide behind a keyboard, would never end up having to go ahead and worry about if the conflict you went to go perpetuate for over 20 years would end up going and landing at your doorstep, and then to end up finding out that you just got directly called out from that person that you'd been harassing for over 2 decades, or, perpetuating having them harassed for over 2 decades, going ahead and calling out your address, calling out where your workplace is, calling out family members, which, by the way, how's Cynthia doing? Is Cynthia doing good, Dylan? If I remember correctly, for her, the only thing that ended up mattering, was, making sure that she preserved your athletic, career and, the social perception of you, because, obviously high school athlete, potentially on your way to going ahead and making a name for yourself and paying your way through the entirety of your academics, through all of your, achievements, and being able to go ahead and say, I didn't have to go ahead and pay a penny for any of the furthering of their education. You know, I trained them to be a winner. I don't know, it sounds like some pretty toxic parenting. You know, it sounds like the type of parent, trust me, I understand. All right, I got some pretty toxic, fucked up parents myself. You know, at least one of them was at least nice enough to make sure that, you know, they didn't get caught up on technology, so they weren't able to use GPS to find their way back from their milk section. You know, when they went to go get some milk and never come back. So, ultimately, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I would feel like, you know, that person, you know, wanted to go ahead and escalate. I'd be feeling like, this is no fun anymore. This is getting a little too real. You know, it sounded like, I might end up going ahead and paying with my existence, you know? So, it might be a good idea to disengage. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, you know, I'm not you. You know, I'm not here to be able to tell you how to live your life. You know, I'm not here to go ahead and tell you exactly what your existence is worth, anything like that. You know, the only thing that I am here to do is go ahead and say, think it through. You've gone and underestimated me time and time again before. You didn't expect this level of escalation, but here we are. So now the question is, with the fact that you so heavily underestimated me, while at the same time thinking that you would get away with, you know, absolutely everything, you didn't see this outcome as a potential outcome. All right, and I understand arrogance, you know, it's a thing, you know, it ends up driving all of us, most of us, you know. I mean, arrogance literally is rooted in pride, and to go ahead and strip yourself of pride, it's a huge task, you know. I mean, literally somebody trying to ask you to strip down your ego, strip down your pride. Yeah, that's asking somebody to strip themselves of, you know, the things that make them human. So, now the question is, you wanted to make a monster. I don't know. Sounds like somebody who understands exactly how much of a monster got made, and is trying to do what they can to, keep from that final step. You know, to, permanently become that monster that they were provoked into becoming. I would say you do what you can to give Pinocchio a chance to stay a real boy, you know, become a real boy and stay a real boy. Because, yeah, if we're going to the Frankenstein reference and everything like that, I don't know. I feel like technology ended up being the make or break point. And then just ask yourself, with being pushed to that point of escalation, and not crossing that line of taking a life, because of understanding when that threshold gets crossed. You know, what threshold, you know, continues on? Where's the next line? Because obviously, everyone has their own personal line in the sand. But you can't expect you out of somebody else. So, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, you go ahead and you do your own risk assessment on that one. I'm just going to go ahead and get back to my video games and, you know, try to do what I can to be able to keep my blood pressure unelevated and, you know, try to enjoy the fact that I exist. You know, despite even doing what I could to try to push me to more low, you know, emotional lows, and try to get me to kill myself, because ultimately you're too much of a pussy to, you know, take the risk of doing it yourself and, you know, risking your freedom.